as you might imagine, we've run into a lot of circumstances where one spouse was on board, the other was not, or
It's
part of
very
the family.
common.
Very common, indeed. And we wanted to share with you 10 tips that we think will really help you to make progress with your preparedness, but yet to put your priorities right and to put your family first, to put people first. It's about people.
The Ready Life, into the country.
Hi, I'm Nick Meisner.
And I'm Lisa, his wife.
And I'm Nathan. And I'm Heidi.
And we want to welcome you back to the Ready Life podcast, where we show you how to make your home and family prepared by becoming as independent as possible for basic necessities like water, heat, food, and the power that most of these things depend on. And in this, our last episode before Christmas, we wanted to bring up something that is really heavy on our hearts, dear to our hearts. And I just think about, when I think about Christmas, I think of two things. I think of, number one, the greatest gift that God has ever given us, which is the gift of life through his Son, whose life on this earth we remember at this time of year. But then the second thing that I think of at Christmas time is I think of happy memories of our family being together. I remember the extended family coming together, staying at my grandma's house. We'd make homemade pizza with lots and lots of garlic, more than you think you should.
I heard one year there was too much garlic.
Almost can't be done. We'd have hot chocolate and garlic toast. Sounds like an unlikely combination, but it's actually pretty good. You should try it. And I remember us cousins having football games in the yard by day and playing dominoes or Risk by night. And it was a special time of family being together and bonding. I realize that some of you may not have happy memories of family being together, and I'm so sorry for that. I really am. But this is a special time of year for these connections, and I hope that you're able to be the start of a new tradition, making those happy memories in your family for future generations. Because there really is something significant about family togetherness in the holiday season. I think it's a special time when families who have perhaps had some challenges and differences throughout the year are brought together into close connection by the bonds of, what should I say, familial love.
Yes.
And they've got to put away those differences, if for no other reason than so their kids can have a nice Christmas. And so something powerful can happen if we let it. Those differences that come between families is one of the things that we want to talk about this week, the week before Christmas. Yeah.
You know, believe it or not, the topic of preparedness and getting ready is an issue that can divide families if you let it. At its extreme, I recall more than one case where a spouse was ready to leave the other spouse because they didn't want to move into the country or get prepared. And we had to try and talk them off of that ledge. But more commonly, it's that subtle tension over spending money or stocking up the pantry, especially when finances are tight, which is often the case around this time of year. Whatever causes it, how are you going to handle it? When you and other family members don't agree about how fragile the system is or the powers that are waiting to use the next crisis for a power grab. What are you going to do when your spouse pushes back about moving to a more rural location, or they think it's a waste of money to put in a hand pump on your well? Are you going to just push forward regardless of the cost to your relationships under the slogan that, oh, someday they'll be glad I did it? Or are you going to sit there in idleness and do nothing until the entire family is completely on board?
As you may have gathered, we think there's a better way that falls somewhere in between these two extremes. We don't think that either of those is the right approach. And a thought hits me. I look at the world around us, and I'm deeply concerned about the fragility of the systems and how dependent everyone is. It really does seem like a house of cards to me. But am I 100% positive that these systems are going to fall apart in my lifetime, or that the powers that be are going to make another power grab during the next crisis? Am I 100% positive? And if I'm being truly honest with myself, I'd have to say no. I don't know the future. I can't. I think it's very likely. I think it's highly possible, even probable, but I can't guarantee that it 100% will happen. On the other hand, I am 100% certain that if I alienate my family for no other reason than that they were oblivious to the signs of the times and they didn't want to prepare, if I alienate them, I will regret it 100%. So let's start with the things that we 100% know and go from there. And as we're in the Christmas season of family coming close together, we want to give some ideas that might be helpful in navigating this issue of preparedness when your family isn't on board. So we've got 10 tips for you that we've picked up over the years because we've run into this a lot. As you might imagine, we've run into a lot of circumstances where one spouse was on board and the other was not, or part of the family.
Common.
Very common, indeed. One of the more common questions that we get. And so we've picked up a lot over the decades that we've been doing this, and we wanted to share with you 10 tips that we think will really help you to make progress with your preparedness, but yet to put your priorities right and to put your family first, to put people first. It's about people.
It really is about people.
Yeah.
I mean, even being prepared, it's all about people.
Yep. So 10 tips. What's number one?
Number one is preparing to share. So make your emphasis on being prepared to help others rather than a self-focused doomsday prepper kind of outlook. Yes, we all know that you can't give what you don't have. So if you're going to help others, you're going to have to be prepared yourself. But making that focus or emphasis on helping others is much healthier, and it's easier for, some other family members to wrap their heads around. I know at Christmas time, we try and teach our children that it's better to give than to receive, right?
Right.
So let's take that into our homesteading and our preparing our homestead.
Right. That we're preparing to share. Number 2, respect. Be respectful in every interaction with your family. Respect is so powerful. It's something that we've really been trying to teach our kids because it's the foundation of every relationship in life. And without mutual respect, there is no relationship. When it's present, you can overcome a multitude of issues, a mountain of differences.
Yes.
And so, trying to understand each other's perspective and look through the other one's eyes and put the best possible construction upon their motives, and don't tear them down. Don't speak badly of them. Be respectful in every interaction that you have with them, and it will just pay dividends in your relationships, the relationships that matter most to you.
That's right. Another one is to spend your influence wisely. Each of us has only a certain amount of influence. You can kind of think of it as like a bank or a bank account that has a finite amount of money in it. And every time you bring something up, you're essentially spending your influence. So spend it wisely. Stay away from what your family might consider to be a conspiracy theory, even if it makes total sense to you and you're quite certain it's not. Just for their sake, don't even breathe a word of it. Instead of that, stick with only items that are well established, that can be documented. And even with those, I would spend that precious influence on those items that are only really, really important. The bottom line, make sure that they can see that your focus is about caring for your family, caring about them and others, and not just a doomsday prepper.
Yep. Kind of outlook. Yeah, right. Number 4, cultivate trust. Don't be sneaky about purchases, even purchases for becoming independent. Don't be sneaking around each other's backs or do anything that would break the trust of your spouse if they were to find out about it. Respect and trust are one of the most valuable items that you have to keep your family together. And if they trust you implicitly, you'll have a much better opportunity to influence them in the right direction.
That's right. Tell you, that's something that we constantly bring up with our kids is, what do we tell you guys to do? Respect each other.
So this plays into one of the previous items, respect.
Yep.
Yep.
But trust goes along with that.
Yep.
So be careful with spending your money. Always discuss financial matters with your spouse before purchasing anything significant.
Another trust thing kind of ties in with trust.
It does very much tie in with trust. If your spouse is not on board with you, then, and especially if you're strapped for cash, try to come up with alternative ways to finance your preparedness activities. That way it won't impact your family budget and cause any kind of financial distress in your home. It's just not worth it. There's so many ways that you can bring in a little extra cash. For instance, if you're a guy, you could sell your prized golf clubs or your valuable set of baseball cards. Or for those of us...
That you've been collecting since you were a kid.
Yeah, I know. Or for women, what about that set of china that you never use? Or you could go and thin out that closet and sell dresses and shoes on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. There's even a lot of little side gigs that you can do to bring in a little extra cash. And it just shows your spouse that you feel strongly about this, but you aren't going to put your family into hardship over it.
Right. I'm just thinking of a bunch of different things coming to my mind, tools that I never use or
rarely ever use.
Yeah, or... yeah. A rifle that I never shoot or whatever, any number of things that you can get a decent amount of cash out of can be a way to finance things. Or like you said, those side gigs where you can make some extra cash without it consuming a lot of time or being a full-time commitment type of thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you play an instrument, teach someone else how to. Or if you are good with English, then teach English. I mean, there's so much that you could do.
What's the classic example Dave Ramsey gives? A pizza delivery man.
A pizza delivery.
Do that on your side as a side hustle to earn some extra money.
Yep.
Number 6, do what you can. Whatever challenges you face, there's something that you can do to improve the situation. Even if your husband has dug his heels in and, why can't you be working on stocking up your pantry? That's something that you may have control over, something that you can do something about. Why can't you put in a garden in the backyard and at least grow in pots? It might be a small garden, might just be in pots, but it's something that you can do to start getting experience and start bringing in some food and have a little bit of additional food security.
And after your spouse tastes those tomatoes, I think they just might change their mind.
That song, Homegrown Tomatoes, is going through my head.
Rolling through mine at the moment.
Why can't you have some water storage? You may not be able to move to a rural location and drill a well and install a solar system without him on board, but there's still a lot that you can do. Or maybe your wife is totally against this and thinks it's all a waste. You too can put in a garden, or you can start canning. Silly boys, canning isn't for girls only.
That's right. Yeah. We've got boys in this house that do canning.
Yeah, that's right. Why can't you get a backup generator so you don't lose a freezer full of food during blackouts? I mean, your wife would be pretty sad if she lost a whole freezer full of food, I think. That's a good reason to get a backup generator, and that's going to do a lot more than just keep your freezer alive for a few days.
Yeah.
if finances allow, why not lobby for that cabin on the lake that your wife has always wanted? But you can steer things in the direction of it being a rural lake, one that's out in the country, and maybe it has some acreage attached to it, to the property. So, these are, work with what you've got, work with the things that you do agree on, and try and steer them in the right direction where they will have double duty, multi-purpose. Search for the things that you got control over and do what you can. And as you do what you can, the way will open for you to do what you could not do.
That's right. Okay, so think of other approaches to accomplish the same thing. For instance, there are other benefits from food storage beyond just the preparedness side of things. Many people have well-stocked pantries purely just to save money because buying in bulk is cheaper. And also, you'll be able to get higher quality food if you buy in bulk. If those reasons appeal more than preparedness, and you're being completely honest about the benefits, why not make these factors a more prominent reason for building up that well-stocked pantry? That's just one example of coming at this from a different perspective.
That is so true, Number 8, be patient. Most of the time, you're not going to change someone's opinion overnight. It's going to take time, and you got to be prepared for that. Don't get impatient or you're going to blow everything. So you're playing the long game here, and you aren't willing to sacrifice your family relationships. You're not going to settle for one or the other, for family or preparedness. You're going to do the very best you can to get both, to prepare your family, and you're going to do everything you can to preserve those family ties. So be patient, play the long game, and you'll be surprised what can happen with patient, persistent effort coupled with the next item on our list.
Prayer. So, I cannot overemphasize the power of prayer. We've seen it. We have seen it do wonders. Prayer and patience combined, they are a mighty force to be reckoned with. And we've seen some of the most stubborn people come to their senses after patient, persistent prayer. At the end of the day, only God really knows how to change hearts. We're dealing with complex human beings that, there's so many things that make up our worldview or where we're at in life. And just learning to be patient and kind and working with God, it goes so much farther.
He's the only one that can change hearts.
That's right.
And our final point, number 10, agree to disagree. At the end of the day, you got to happily agree to disagree. If there's not a meeting of the minds, that may take a while. It may take a long time. It may never happen, but it doesn't have to. You can agree to disagree. Let your spouse or other family member know that you love them regardless of this difference of opinion, and that having a healthy, close relationship with them is far more important to you than just agreeing on every detail and agreeing on these things.
That I think I can't overemphasize this one enough as well, because if you can agree or if you can disagree with somebody and treat them absolutely no different than if you did agree with them, treat them with the same respect and love and kindness that you would anyone else that you agree with, it can go miles to building healthy, happy relationships that in the end will win.
Yep. And we've seen it happen, friends.
Yep.
Over the years, we've seen it happen. Just a couple of stories come to mind. One was a sweet lady with children, and she had a husband who was very much not on board. She came to our seminars that we were conducting in her area, and she was convicted that she needed to take action and become more prepared and try and get in the country and do some things like that. But what could she do with a husband that wanted none of it? Sounded like he was a nice guy, but just had no interest in
these types of things, or country living.
So she started with learning all that she could. She even led out in organizing classes in her church on becoming more prepared, country living, and these kinds of things. She was homeschooling her children, and she used that opportunity to teach them all the practical skills that she could. And she learned all that she could. She was getting resources, and, they were just learning together, she and her kids. And as I recall, if I recall right, I think she may have even put in a little garden in their backyard or something along those lines. I don't remember
they
about
did a lot
all the
of
details.
Stuff in their little home before.
Yeah. But above all, she was patient and long-suffering and praying earnestly for her husband's heart to change. And as far as we could see, she treated him with respect, didn't down him, didn't get bitter about him. She did what she could, and she prayed, and she tried to be patient. This went on for a period of years.
Several years, as I recall.
It wasn't a quick thing.
Mm-hmm.
She made some progress in doing what she could, the things that she had control over, the things that she could. But after several years of watching his wife patiently stick with this thing, her husband finally consented to them purchasing a small place in the country. And it needed some work. And so last I recall, I don't remember all the details, but I think they were kind of going back and forth, and they'd go there and work on it and work on fixing it up and then come back. And there was some back and forth there and all of that.
And
but
her husband was getting more and more on board with this idea,
as
I recall.
So it just goes to show that being patient and long-suffering, praying and doing what you can, it can make a huge difference. And even if your spouse never is really totally on board, there's still a lot that you can do to put your family in a better position while still preserving the family relationships.
Talking about the importance of family relationships makes me think of another story that happened not too terribly long ago. There was a family where the wife felt very great urgency about moving, and her husband was, I guess, okay with it. But anyway, so they moved-ish. They were moving into a completely different state, and so they rented a place. But after being there for a couple of weeks, the husband was not able to find work, and so he had taken vacation time, and that's why he was able to go with his family to the new state for a couple of weeks. But then he went back to his job because he had a good job. It paid well, and it'd been a very good experience for him. Anyway, months went by. It was, I think, almost the better part of a year, and she and the kids were still in another state, multiple states away, and he was still back working in California at his good job. And she reached out to us, and I got on the phone with her, and we chatted about a property that she was looking at, purchasing or whatever. And I say fortunately, but the property had some very, very, very big red flags, things that I told her I could not recommend purchasing that property just based on what I could see, from a distance. Anyway, but then we got to talking about her family, and she was telling me about her husband working down in California, and, it just got into a little bit of the family dynamics. And I started to get the feeling that maybe she was so excited about this and so eager and urgent about moving into the country, into this other state, that she hadn't really stopped to consider maybe what her husband's thoughts were about this particular move.
And the impact on their relationship.
Yeah, and the impact on their relationship, because there were things that she shared with me, that made me worried about that. So I encouraged her to go back to her husband, just sit down with him and listen. Just listen. What did her husband have to say about everything? And I told her it's never a good idea for a family to split apart like that. Maybe in an emergency situation.
For a short time.
For a short time, that would be okay. But even in emergency situations, we always try the very hardest to stick together, because in an emergency, that's when you need each other the most. But nevertheless, it's never a good idea to split up a family like that. And so she did. She went back. She listened to what her husband's thoughts were. And they found a lovely country place not far from her husband's job that was within good driving distance. And so they're in the country back in California, and their family is together. And that just, it just goes to show you how important the family unit is, even though, bless you folks who live in California.
I know. I was going to say, I'm not a fan of California.
I'm not either, but I am a fan of families sticking together regardless.
Right.
And, even no matter where you are, it might not be the most ideal situation. But here in this situation, she put her family first. And I believe the Lord is blessing that little family as a result.
And which brings up the whole work issue, which is kind of another topic for another day.
It is.
But in that kind of a situation, if they did feel that getting into another state was a good idea for them, then I'd like to see them hunt for a job before moving and see if they can get something nailed down and then make their move.
That's right.
Where they don't have this split apart thing going on.
Yes, to move wisely.
That's right. That's right. So just know that you're not alone, friend. If you're in this situation, many others have dealt with these types of issues. Keep your priorities straight. This isn't about giving up on independence and preparedness. This is about putting people first. And when they see you consistently putting them ahead of yourself with a lot of patience and prayer, you'll be amazed what can happen. So this Christmas, please enjoy the people that are dear to you. They are what matter, friends. They mattered enough to God that He sent His Son down here to save them. And that's what we remember in this Christmas season. They're worthy of any patience and forbearance that you've got. Merry Christmas.
So hold your loved ones close. And we want to wish you Merry Christmas.